who is Gehan. Gehan, he will talk about technology transformations, and he's been working with some well-known brands, both in Sweden and elsewhere. So please, the stage is yours, Gehan.
Thank you, Christine. There's, I think, a deck that's coming up as well. There we go. Hi, afternoon, everybody. My name is Gehan Dias. I'm the GM of a firm called Kelsey Technologies. Want to tell you a little bit about the firm, and then we can get on to the topic at hand. I just need, hold on. Yeah, I think I'll tell you what, can someone just hit the next slide for me, please? Perfect, thank you. Right, so Kelsey Technologies is a product engineering firm. So we provide software engineering teams that build products for tech firms across the globe, including, mind you, in Sweden, including in Gothenburg, as it turns out. A lot of business in the US, a lot in the UK, some in Australia, and a little bit in Europe as well. We are based out of Sri Lanka, out of an innovation park here, I think a little bit similar to what you have at Lindholmen, maybe a bit smaller. And we've been operating for about almost 20 years now. And numerous accolades along the way, but I think the Gartner, so the Gartner one is the one that we kind of reference. The Gartner recognizes as one of the delivery capable providers in APAC a couple of years ago. Now, what I want to talk about today, sorry, next slide, please. Thank you. The theme of today is beyond 2033. And so I want to talk a little bit about what we can maybe expect from software development. And I mean the process of software development beyond 2033. And there, if you want my take, I see much or most of software development happening remotely. And that will be clear here. When I say remotely, there's like a spectrum of remote, right? So if you take where we are now, post-COVID, mind you, everybody is remote already. Right? The first stage of remote is where everybody works for a company, does their same job, but does it at home. After you do that for a while, and after I think you get used to it, you see that kind of works. What everybody expects to see is a mind shift change, where companies ask themselves, well, actually, why do I have to hire somebody who lives 20 kilometers from the office? Why don't I hire the person who best fits my needs, my budget, and the skill profile around anywhere on the globe? And once you go down that path, you end up with this, you end up really with remote distributed teams, right? Teams where there are engineers all over in different. So a given Scrum team could have, engineers from different countries, different continents, different time zones, different cultures, everybody working together to build software. That's what I think will happen. And I suppose then that begs the question: how effective is that going to be? How effective are those sorts of teams? Can we look to those sorts of teams to build complex software and solve complex problems? And the short answer, if I can give you that, the short answer is yes. And I can say it's yes because I've been running these sorts of teams for about 20 years now. But to back that up a little bit, I've brought along a few examples, a few case studies, if you will, of the sorts of things that we have done as a remote distributed team. So the first one, sorry, next slide, please. So the first one that I'd like to talk about, one of our clients is a company called Fresh Fitness Food. Fresh Fitness Food is a UK-based company, and they provide essentially health food plans. If you can hit the next slide, I'll explain that some more. So how their model works is so you sign up on the website, and what you do is you specify your goal, your fitness goal. And it might be you want to lose weight, you want to add muscle, some combination of the two. There's a set of different goals that you can choose. And then the system gives you a meal plan. So for argument's sake, for the next 30 days, for the next 60 days, you should have so many calories a day. on any given day, so many grams of carbs, so many grams of protein, so many grams of you know, everything else, I suppose, and fat and so on. And so you get this meal plan, and then what this company does, they actually make fresh food for you every day and deliver it. So every day they deliver breakfast, lunch, dinner to you for 30 days or 6 days, however long you signed up for, to help you get to your goal. Right? That's sort of the business model. Next slide, please. Now, this company was founded in 2013 in London, and founded very small. So I think the two founders started making the meals in their flat in Notting Hill in London, and they grew fairly fast. So they grew from delivering a dozen meals a day to thousands of meals a day. And as they did that, they of course scaled out the operation. So much more staff, from nutritionists to chefs to delivery staff, and beyond. Of course, dedicated production facilities, so central kitchens in London, and a software system to manage that whole operation. But so when they came to us, their software system was still a constraint on a number of different fronts. I mean, to start with, it couldn't handle the volume. So they'd grown so much that the system couldn't handle the number of orders coming in to start with. But they also had fairly complex technical problems, one of which was they were still running a manual process to create the meal plan for every new customer. So every time they onboarded a new customer, a human nutritionist would look at their requirements and write out a meal plan and put that into the system. And so that obviously, completely constrained their ability to scale. And then they had a number of other constraints in terms of the system didn't really have much in the way of self-service. So really any amendment, adjustment, change had to go to the phone or email. And, and at scale, you can't, it's hard to do that unless you have a massive, a huge support team. So net, by about 2017, 2018, they were really struggling. And they found that their systems, that they had, constrained their growth. And they had a high number of errors, and they had an efficiency problem. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. So I think we met them in 2018. 2019, we sort of started working with them formally. And so what we did was we provided this company, Fresh Fitness Food, with an engineering team, a remote engineering team, but integrated that team completely with the product team in London. And through that, over a 10-month period, just built a brand new bespoke mini ERP system, right, which did a whole bunch of things. I mean, customer self-service was a big part of it. So modules that let the customer manage their meals and deliveries and addresses and timing and all the details that were coming through email and phone beforehand. A big advancement was we built a set of algorithms for meal planning. So when a customer on board and they say, I want to lose so much weight in this time period, we were able to codify all of the logic that the nutritionists were using. We were able to codify that into a bunch of algorithms, and now actually the application creates a meal plan automatically, right? So you have that scaling factor. And then really a whole bunch of, I think important, maybe less well seen, but as important back-end functions for centralizing procurement, scheduling production at the kitchens, packing, delivery, a whole bunch of stuff there. So we built a bespoke ERP essentially just for this company, and that system went live at the end of 2019, and was a roaring success, if I say so myself. I mean, you don't often see that kind of immediate success when you put a new software system in, but from and then the CEO told me this from the day one, from the very first day that system went live, their margin went up by I think it was 14%, just from the efficiencies that we had built into the meal planning and procurement algorithms. And essentially what it meant was there was just less waste, dramatically less waste. You could make more meals with with a fixed amount of ingredients essentially. And so really in the last year, FFF, with this system, with the removal of these constraints, FFF has been able to grow quite dramatically. I mean, they're now the number one bespoke nutrition provider in the UK, and we continue to push forward. I mean, we're doing, we're still partner, but actually we've taken an equity stake in the company, where we're planning out new products, we're planning out really their global expansion. And that's an example, I think, of a remote distributed team building complex software. Next slide, please. Now, you might say, well, that's a model we've seen before. Client in one location, team in another location. So we'll move on. So this brand is probably familiar to you, Nelly, based in Gothenburg, essentially. Next slide, please. So Nelly is, there's fashion, online fashion retail. I think particularly strong in the market for ladies fashion, as I understand. And Nelly partnered with us in 2017 to expand capacity. And at the time, I think what had happened was that the engineering team at Nelly was just consumed by the day-to-day, and that always happens in any in any tech firm, really, which is that the day-to-day needs and the thing that marketing brings you or the thing that the sales team brings you gets priority and gets done, right? And then after a while, that's just it. You end up focusing almost entirely on the short term. You have very little capacity left for longer term projects. And they were I think long-sighted enough to see, what's the word I should say, basically far-sighted enough to see that this is not the best way to proceed. And so they engaged us to bring on an additional team. And so here what we have is two teams. So there's actually, Nelly's engineering team sits in two locations, 7 or 8 people here, I think slightly larger team in Gothenburg. And the two teams work together to push Nelly forward and Nelly's roadmap forward. And they work across all areas, on the front end, on the back end, on mobile, on supplier systems. There's a single backlog that everybody works off. There's a single repository for code, single Jira, and essentially it's one team just distributed in 2 locations. And by doing that, I think what we've seen, what we've been able to see in Nelly is an acceleration of what the technology team can do, and thereby an acceleration of what the business has been able to do, including, mind you, a lot of the longer term stuff, which is R&D, and the adoption of leading edge tech. I mean, funnily, I know the team did a POC demo yesterday of some really interesting tech that I think will go into production, probably down the line. And that that's enabled by this ability to have talent in multiple locations working on your problems. Next slide, please. Now you might think, well, okay, that's engineering distributed in 2 locations. That's not too hard, probably not. So let me give you another example. The next one. So Dreamstart Labs is another client of ours. And they are based in the US. And so Dreamstart builds technology for the developing markets. Actually, if you don't mind going back 1 slide, please. Thank you. So the core product is something called DreamSave, and what it is, I'll try to explain this sort of in a nutshell, is it systematizes what's called a savings group. So savings groups are sort of a newer way of looking at lending in emerging markets. Think of it kind of like as peer-to-peer microfinance, sort of, right? And that model has a lot more has some of the benefits and resolves some of the issues that you see in traditional microfinance. So what happens in a saving group essentially is, imagine that you're in a village somewhere in Tanzania. There is no local bank. The local bank is a day's walk away. And so what you do is you create this savings group, and what the model there is that everybody in the group, so say 20 families, they all commit to save and contribute a certain amount of money every month. That's called 1,000 shillings. So every month they contribute 1,000 shillings into the pool, and then collectively they lend the pooled amount of money out to people, again from the same community, right? So it's a way of both of saving and of providing financing. And so that process is administrated through a bunch of applications. If you have a smartphone, you can there's an application for it. I mean, there's also a feature phone way of recording transactions, through SMS, etc. And all of that gets captured in the cloud, and it gets run through an analytics platform, because at the other end of it, you have governments and development organizations who are kind of administrating these programs, seeing how they're doing, identifying different models, different models of lending that that are more effective than others, and tweaking some of the parameters there. Next slide, please. So that product was, it's the initial version had been built out, I think, had a while ago. Dreamstart partnered with us early on this year, January of this year, essentially, and they needed us for capacity for engineering, but actually, in addition, or even more importantly, for engineering leadership, for advice and counsel on how to manage their operation. And if you look at the organization, below, they have a completely distributed organization. So the CEO and the CTO and the product manager essentially are in the US. The head of engineering is now here in Sri Lanka. We've got dev teams in Sri Lanka, Vietnam, and Rwanda. We've got QA teams in Sri Lanka and the Philippines, and then customer support is done out of Rwanda, because it's large for the African region at the moment. And so here's an example of a completely distributed team, right? So they're on 5 different countries here, 4 or 5 different components in terms of front ends, back ends, mobiles, mobile applications, and so on. And all of these teams working, seamlessly, very, very smooth. Especially, I think, once we were able to get in and kind of help organize a little bit. I mean, it's early days. We've only been there, so it was a little bit less than a year, but we're already seeing a dramatic improvement in the operation in terms of decreasing delays, decreasing bugs, decreasing production issues, and we've been able to accelerate the roadmap delivery. Within a few months of us turning up, we were able to kind of launch a new product for analytics, for example. But here, I mean, more important than that, I think here's an example of a completely distributed team in all corners of the globe, working very effectively together. Next slide, please. And the next one. So what I kind of wanted to sketch out here, or to provide some examples of, was this conversation to answer this question about distributed software teams. I think the trend is largely irreversible. I'm pretty confident that forget 13 years from now, I think 5 years from now, you will find this trend where, as a software engineer, you're working in a firm, and the other members of your Scrum team, maybe some of them are in your country, but probably the bulk of them are not. They're kind of all over, right? Because your firm, your hiring manager has gone out to get the very best talent. And in my view, that trend is absolutely beneficial. I think it is always a win-win when you can get access and the very best talent, and get that talent to tackle the hardest problems. That's always an upside for doing that. You have to be organized to be able to do it effectively and do it efficiently. So I mean, obviously you need a decent amount of collaboration practices and tools. There's no rocket science to this stuff. Essentially, I mean, it's what I suspect most people have already been doing, in the COVID sort of remote work from home periods. Calls, the daily scrums, the sprint planning, etc. You have to give everybody the tool like Slack, etc. So that there are different channels for teams, different channels for different modules, for example, common code repository, common bug repository, common Jira repository, common knowledge repository. That stuff, it's nothing that you haven't seen before, I don't think. I put common language down here. I think that's important. I mean, this works entirely on people being able to communicate, and so you can't kind of get past the fact that if that language is the key part of that. In my view, I think it's important that everybody in the team speaks the same language, literally speaks the same language, and in practice that is going to be English. Certainly in all our engagement, it's always English, and you have to kind of push that for all communication, all documents. Else you will build a lot of friction in the system, and that's not really going to be practical. The biggest part to making this sort of thing work is culture and values. right? So I mean, I've listed some key values here about trust and transparency, accountability and respect. And one of the main things, if you want to make this sort of distributed team work, where everybody's from a different place, everybody's from a different culture, is you have to be able to treat everyone as equals, as peers, right? And take on board all of their little quirks, essentially. But essentially, you have to be able to have a level playing field so that the team can truly form as a team. I mean, culture is its own topic. We can talk about, culture of software teams for a whole other presentation. That's something else. But in general, that's kind of what I wanted to really communicate today. I think this is very much, I think, what is coming down the pipe. Remote distributed work. I think that will be the future. Everybody who's watching this presentation. Thanks.
Hey. Okay.
Hey there. How's it going?
Working? Yes.
Yep.
So thank you
good.
very much, everyone, for a great presentation. We had several questions, but we were running a little bit out of time. But what I will do now is to I'll ask Oliver also to come in to join the scene. I don't know if Alex is still on the webcam. Can we get him along as well? Hello. So really a lot of questions from the audience, but unfortunately we will not have so much time. But I would like to have the focus on beyond 2033, because that is the theme of this Lindholmen Science Park Development Day. So I just wonder who would like to answer that question. What do you see? What do you see, Oliver?
I see, if we talk Moxiam, I see that we will understand what the individual needs, and we can make that individual feel like I'm, for instance, there. So technology will be able to do marvelous things, and if we understand and really want well-being of the individual, we can make that happen, even though time is an issue for everyone.
So TEDGI interactions. Can you do TEDGI interactions
for sure.
as well?
Yeah.
Okay. And Alexander, how about you? What do you see beyond 2033?
So I am very much of an optimist, and I would say that we as a humanity, we're going to be more healthy now moving into the future. Like a push like the one that Moxiam is doing, I think that's great. Also what big companies like Apple are doing. Tim Cook, for example, he recently said that Apple will not be remembered for computers, but how they change the health aspects of humanity. I think that is very true. It's also possible that we will be so much more efficient and smarter, and we will have access to so much knowledge, and that can be distributed all across the world. We have only started this journey now, and with data-driven models, both for companies, but also these solutions that we give individuals and people all over the planet, I think that can bring on remarkable change that will contribute to like a positive outcome for humanity overall, and also to combat things like climate change, etc. But that's my overview, high-level kind of answer to that question.
So again, you will not have time to answer, so I will just wrap it up a little bit for you, because we need talent, we need remote systems to be able to foresee that we will able to take these steps. So thank you very much to everyone for a great presentation and for attending to this track.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Take care.
Bye.